medieval. So I think I'm going to do something a little close to home, but something I haven't really done, and do some chainmail, but Japanese. So the Japanese style of chainmail is different than like a European style. They're kind of in like this square or diamond pattern, and then they also have plates on a number of them. So yeah, so they're like these ellipse loops with smaller rings, and then they have plates. So this helps protect basically the gaps between the lacquered steel plates, which is pretty cool and different. So I'm going to shoot for something kind of like this. Probably do this kind of surface treatment on the metal, where it's basically a resin coated steel. We pretty much have to use hexagons because hexagons will pack flat, while other shapes will not pack flat. So in order to have a tiling texture, it's really difficult to do non-hexagon or square shapes. Yeah, I think without triangles, octagons pack round. Triangles will pack flat. So what I mean by that is size. There we go. So this is a hexagon. So then 6 of them. Adjust the radius. And then oh, interesting. That just doesn't change anything. Should just do the math. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I got your name right. Skin Choppy. Hey, welcome. Okay, we're just talking about packing of stuff. Okay, so all of these gaps are regular, But if we switch this to a pentagon, and then we change our rotation and ring rotation, oh, and of course our number, just our ring rotation and our rotation here. It's a decimal. But see how there are these gaps here? The only way for that to work is to start folding it into a three-dimensional shape. So that's why we kind of have to stick with hexagons, because we'll be able to have regular gaps across everything. They do get a little annoying because their height to width ratio is not nice. So to make it work on a square, you have to do some kind of funky stuff. But see, where we have a 10 by 10 and it doesn't work because the width is not equal to the height. So this is the full height, and then we have gaps over here. So to get them to be correct, I believe it is 14 and 12. Okay, switch. Yeah. And then we have to go negative with the interstices. It's the square root of 2 minus 1, something like that. Because of the way the triangles and stuff work. So then we actually have like unsquashed hexagons that tile over the square. 6 and 7 are close, but they don't tile. So like the ratio of height to width is close to correct, but they don't tile because it's an odd number. So we pretty much have to do 12 and 14 to get it to actually tile. And then you can sometimes crop in on it and get a tiling that works. But we're just gonna basically up our resolution so that things stay crisp, and then reduce our scale to give us more gap. Maybe we don't do it here, we do it here. I turn the scale way up. Oh, I did. Okay. Turn it up. Scale. Alright, so let's break down some of these shapes in here. So first and foremost, we have rings kind of all the way around. And then we have these loops, tabs that connect them. First thing we need to do is see if we can I'm trying shape mapper, but it looks like it distorts things too much. So splatter circular. The issue with these in general is that we're probably not going to get the shape that we want. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we blend this on top of that. Nothing lines up to the corners, so then we'll rotate the ring so that things line up. And then the issue with this is that every one of these middle ones isn't pulled in basically parallel with the rest. So then it looks like we need to do 6. And then another one with a different radius to try to get things to be parallel. Currently they're on top of each other. So then another 6. And then rotate that to the corners. I'm trying to look at the shapes, edges. Basically what I'm looking at is, like, do these feel lined up? Use threshold. This shape is out slightly, it looks like. So we'd want to decrease the radius, right? So this should kind of hit them all at the same time, and then it should leave them all at about the same time. So then the radius is somewhere in between. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now we have our rings. We're going to use the scale of this to give a little bit more room. And then this is going to be our actual ring shape for these. So then thinking about the easiest way to get a paraboloid, or I guess a donut shape, a torus. Which would be taking this shape, doing the levels on it, I feel like I'm just fumbling around mentally here. So what is this? Is essentially a histogram scan, changing my position and contrast. Okay. I should turn that into a node. I am going to turn that into a node. Mega torus. So what it essentially is the in high value, and then the in low, and then taking the mid, and all the way down. So if we expose this, it starts at 1, so this is just a 1 minus. No, it's just this number. This, if this is 0.3, then this should be 0.6. So it's take this number, multiply it by 2, and then that gives that. Oh, why did I multiply by 0.5? 2. I'm going to do some math on it so that the slider behaves a little bit more the way that you would expect. So then it's this number times 2, 1 minus. So it's how close to the outside it is. So it should be 1 minus, and then times 0.5. Okay. Sheesh. I ran a torus in. And levels to it. So we're going to look at the size comparison to see if it feels correct. Also want to figure out the radius difference here, 43372-ish. I generally don't like having the size set that way. I would much rather use scale to control it. It's one number. We'll round up. It's a little bit smaller. And then looking at the spacing, essentially the radius, how close they are. So the ones that fall in the middle have the loops on them. So I'm going to duplicate that as a starting point, and then they're kind of these capsule shaped loops. Which I think I'm going to do as a couple of gradients. So create the flat and then the round. So then here's where I can change the size. Where I want to change the aspect ratio. These are going to go on top. So I'm going to use add, turn this to 32, and then auto levels. Take that back. It should be lighten. And this stuff will need to be added back. So we gotta punch some holes for each of those. I'm actually going to use a polygon instead of a paraboloid, just because they look less regular than a circle. And then push these back 1 to 1. And then I'm going to randomize them a little bit. So then before we put the loops through, punch those holes. And subtract. And then, where's our rotation random? Whoa. Oh. There we go. That way, that shape can kind of rotate randomly. Because we could do something in here. Actually, we're going to take this back in the process. So we're going to do it here. And then pipe this in. We start putting the rings on. So move this out of the way, move this back. Oops. Okay. So then, oh wait. Wanted to move this whole chunk back. This back here too. Been a long week. Okay. Because that will allow a warp to adjust our hexy shape. because it's handcrafted, so it's not perfect. Okay. So then these are connected and these are connected. So the corners aren't here, but this is connected basically to the adjacent ones. So we need bands here and here, and then one that just kind of goes out in a way. Gonna have to make a bunch of these to do kind of each piece, which is fine. So this one will be rotating from max Y. Messed something up before I did that. Okay. Max Y. And then bring the radius in. Rotate the ring. I'm going to scale these down a little bit. So the scale was 1, 2, 1, 2. If I do center and push the radius out, change the ring rotation, and then rotation here. Does this allow me to do rotation random? It does, and it stays mostly attached. So we'll switch this to that as well. Because I don't want it to be, straight lines all the way around. That doesn't look right. So then this piece extending out over here, this one extending out over here, this extending out. Basically need another one of these. Which I could do right after. We essentially want to take those pieces, flip them out the other way. We don't want any random on it because we need them to line up perfectly with the other ones. So these will actually go into that. Okay, wait a sec. It's offset. So we'll do this and then try doing a tile to see basically where it's at. So from before, no, 12, 14. Was it 207. That is, I guess, correct. Okay. So we're looking at this. So one ring in between, one ring in between, links, then there's the one in the corner. So that basically means that all this stuff that we did kind of needs to be done with tiling in mind so that things can line up the way that they're supposed to, which they're not currently. So we're going to take this back a few, just see if we can get the rings to line up. And we're going to adjust till we get basically one ring on the sides. So we know that that is tiling correctly. And the thing is to make sure that our hex grid is the way it should be, which it looks like it is not. It'll be correct when you scale up and everything disappears at the same time. Okay, so now that tiling is correct, where there's boom, 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 all line up. Sweet. So then those are these ones. Yes, we're going to keep those because those are correct. So we should be able to do 3 of them and rotate the ring. And then that gets us our 6. Then we got to do the corners. This should also be 3. We should be able to, again, rotate the ring. Or does it need to be 4? Surely not 6. No, it should be, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it should be 3. We're dealing with 6 of them. So that's pushing them all in the corners. Now I'm super confused. Confused myself. This is missing. So it's corner, corner, corner. So it's overlapping. Oh wait, no it's not. But it does here. And I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. Oh, interesting. So that's the pattern that we would need to tie them all together. So if I don't random mask, but then I just then we have a full Sweet. Okay. We're getting somewhere. It's kind of crazy that this tiles into this. So then if we darken it and then start putting the rings in, the loop connectors, I'm going to try using manual placement, and we'll see how that works, which will help inform basically what it should be. Oh, changed on the wrong thing. So if I take this, place that there, how does that tile? Okay, so that connects those two things. Make sure this is set to max. Okay. So having that there ties this to the next one of the other. So then what happens if I move this one up and do that? Okay, those two are linked together. Which makes sense. So then hook, whoop, this one to this one basically. And those are hooked. So that's cool. Like leaning on tiling real heavily here. And these 2D transforms might be replaceable by splatter circular, but it'll be one instance that we're just rotating around, and it would allow the scale to be kept more correct. For now, this works. I guess if you look at the graph, it'll look less procedural because the blue nodes, the 2D transform nodes are usually tips for, oh, you manually placed a lot of stuff, which I don't know if that like really matters. Okay, so then these two need to be connected together, and that one needs to be trailing off. Seems to be moved up here. Connect those two. And then this one, I just go that way. Okay, things are connected around the outside. So then, in theory, doing that, so I'm just going to clean that up. Now everything is connected and in tiling. Whoa! Sweet! So, few issues. We don't have a good way to target our tiles, our things. We don't have like an ID mask or something like that, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult than it probably should be to make this look good. So I might have to take some steps back and use color nodes to have an ID map. But that should be easy to do. We have all the pieces. Like, do all this stuff separate and then have 3 of these. Maybe that's unnecessary. I definitely want control over the plates. Okay. So if I duplicate this, and instead of doing this, just do that. And then just do that. And adjust this. Type this in the background. Whoop. Then these can be controlled separately. So gradient, invert, give these their shape back. I'm actually going to dome this a little bit more. Polygon 1, let's try polygon 2. Because this has curve and gradient. Scale was 5.4. Okay. So then this is my plates mask, and then my links mask. So we can do color block out real quick. So these are kind of a dark bluish metal or lacquered metal, and then looks like a steel. It's hard to tell. Like looking at this, I can almost guarantee that the links are metal, but these plates, they're also probably metal, but there might be some sort of coating on them, which might not be metal. So I'm going to try metal. Just say, hey, it's metal. Let's see. Oh, wait. I want to blend these after the fact. So I blend them in the node, then I can't have a mask. Histogram scan. Metal's usually pretty bright, but once there starts to get a layer of something on it, those rules start to break down a little bit. Um, I'm basically just blocking in values to get a sense for what's the overall shape fall off the strength of the highlight, looking at the color, see if the color feels right. It doesn't quite have the right shaping yet. Like, probably need noise in here. Start with a large scale noise. And then move on to a smaller scale. So here, we're going to change our bits to 32. But on the top, it's flattening out a little bit. So So then we're starting to get a little bit more of the kind of surface property there. I want those plates to have pretty good scale on them. And then these should be less. So then there's a little bit more surface definition in there. So we're going large, medium, medium small, and then try to do some real fine. So I noticed that there's this pitting on the surface. And these like little peaks. So I'm going to try to make little peaks by doing a non-uniform blur, which the areas that are really dark get these little dimples. And then if I do subtract, that should give me some of those. I don't know if the noise is the right one yet. But, oh, there we go. Let's try. I want fewer of them, fewer of those. Pits and things, so should also be less noticeable. So then the saturation on this and the value needs to come up, the saturation down. They need to read mostly gray. And then inherit the lighting. So I think yeah, kind of the medium detail is a little too strong, looking at the shape of the highlights. So this probably needs to be warped a bit so that we can vary up the shapes, because they're not all perfect hexagons. That's not realistic. but so just a little bit of wiggliness. And then I'm going to do that here as well, which is just going to help keep things connected, but it's going to kind of redistribute the links around a bit. These two warps are the same, so that the holes kind of move and the chain parts move too. This value and this value put some variation into these. Doing the very slight warp helps break up the appearance of any sort of like tiling. So one of the issues if you were to just use this straight is that you'd see the pattern go from here to here to here. So this helps break that continuity so that that pattern doesn't go continuously all the way around. You can't trace it with your eye. Got this nice rust or something. It looks like rust variation that's happening. And there's these kind of like nice yellows and oranges that are happening in there. So I'm trying to push some of that in. And then I'm just trying to make an interesting mask. There's this like kind of modeling, kind of dusty gray all over the surface. I'm trying to create a mask for that, which is mostly in the roughness, it looks like. So oh, wacky. Okay, so what if we just make this 16-bit? Okay. So those pieces get kind of a dusty quality. And then we mask it in based on AO. Oops. Kind of looking for the blending mode that does what I like the most. So out of curiosity, just want to see if I get any kind of bad haloing if I drop the metalness on in those areas. And then is it worth it? Probably not. Okay, so the other thing is that these are stitched onto the armor. So you can see these stitches, the big loop, to make sure that the fabric armor moves with you, because then the whole thing is strapped to you, and it helps reduce chafing and it spreads out the impact. So this will help basically make the fabric cut resistant, and then the fabric helps distribute the impacts and everything. So I need to throw kind of a coarse fabric weave behind it. Which I might just use like the leaf node. Because it looks very similar. Weave generator. Yeah, it looks like a real simple over under over under. But like the thread regularity is quite varied. Like there's this super tiny thread here, and then this like thick thread. So I think I'm gonna try increasing these threads and having more gaps. It seems like the horizontal ones are a little bit more thin. And then they're all basically going to be the same color. Just going to do a safe transform, tile it a whole bunch. Well, so we do 5 and 10, and then I'll go to 20 and then 10. Can this go to 40? Can. And then 20. Then I don't use this. And then I still keep all my masks. So all of this would then go on top of the fabric. So this would blend on top with this mask. And then real simple gradient map. I'm going to pick, wait. And it'll need to get warped stuff. We're just gonna shove all this together in a lighten mode. And our metalness is combo of this metal and this metal. And then, yeah. Our AO is crazy strong because the background is just black. So then here we need a blend that is putting this into the background. So shrink the fabric back, 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 back. It's got to sit just behind the rings. About like that. I'm gonna try adjusting this. And the weave needs to be even tighter. So then we'll go to 80 and 40. It needs to be twice that at least. So let's try 360 and 180. A little less. 150, 300. Maybe 120, 240. So sweet. I'm adding some variation and then kind of correlation between the stuff that's on the fabric and the fabric. So it feels like the fact that these rigid things are stitched to the fabric, that it's having a hard time moving, and then potentially the weight of those pieces being stuck stretched it out over time. And the roughness, well, this roughness work actually needs to get blended on top of a thing. Which, with the scale of it, it's probably fine if it's just a solid color. And that is pretty high roughness. Actually, I just thought of that. We should take it and levels it so that the blacks are 100% rough. Otherwise, we're going to get kind of this weird fringy halo thing that'll happen. The opacity falls out. What? If it's 100% black, we want it to be 100% rough. Okay, so the roughness isn't changing. Oh, because we need to mask this in here. Here we go. Okay, now we have a rough weave behind the scenes. These plates. This, I'm going to up a little bit. And then the little dimply boys, I'm gonna take those down a little bit. They're a little distracting. Once things get into the like albedo phase, they always get so disorganized for me. It's a thing that I want to be better about, but sheesh. That's where you start taking all the stuff across the graph. You need it for the roughness, you need it for the albedo, you need it for all the different things, and you just end up with this spider web. Like these masks. Wait. Oh. Incorrect. Okay. Currently, this is just a gradient map. I want to put some variation in. Basically, where this metal has been sitting, presumably getting rusty, rubbing off onto the cloth. The warm air from sweating and stuff is going to go through the cloth, and it's going to like kind of corrode the back of those, and then it's going to sit against the cloth. So I want to put some rusty orange in there. So I'm going to hue shift this toward rust. Saturation, lightness down. So it kind of reads like rust. It didn't end up spreading as much as I would like, so we'll use the levels. Push the overall. value up, take the saturation down a little bit. And I think I'm going to shift the hue on it. The orange had a nice quality to it. Because it's kind of a complementary to the bluish metal. One thing that I'm noticing is that the metal color for these plates is bleeding a little bit. Looking in here, don't want that. It looks like same with these a little bit. Shrink those a little, up the contrast, and adjust the levels here, here. Take the fabric down a little bit. I'm going to increase the radius on this, or I guess reduce the radius. Thicken the ring. I guess the last touch would be seeing if I could get the stitches in. Like these kind of stitches that are holding it down. So that would mean taking this and making kind of a U-shape piece. Stitch. There's a stitch, right? Paper. Fiber. So basically, I want to take this, one of these, and then levels a gradient. So that it feels kind of peaked and loop over, and then multiply this on top. And then cut it down to one thread. Okay, so now there's one thread. Do a tile sampler. With the thread. Now we have these threads. Sweet. And then this is our mask. Then we mask it. Knock this back a little bit so I can see where the threads ended up. Okay, that's where the threads ended up. I'm just going to make a lot more of them. And our scale to 1. Then we kind of want them to be rotated perpendicular to the things. So we're going to make a normal map so that we can rotate them. It mostly works. Shrinking the mask so that it's less likely to land, and then when it does, it lands kind of where it's supposed to. So we're going to just change the scale instead of the number. So fewer of them, and then wow. Maybe happy medium. So the, I guess it's not the issue, but an issue is sometimes a thread lands perfectly. Sometimes it lands like this, and then its rotation is all silly. So I'm just trying to think about whether there'd be a way for me to basically put it on a grid and then just do a mask random. So I think I might, no, that won't work. I was gonna say pre-stitch and then do the tile sampler. Could though, now that I'm thinking about it. It would turn on groups of stitches. Not a shape mapper in sight. What do you mean? And I'm also curious if the pronunciation is Jovier or Joviex. I don't want to mispronounce names if I can help it. So this is the tile setup. So if I took this, knock this back, in virtual space, it's just kind of a chorus sound, chorus synth. To get that rotated tile, you could use a shape mapper if the pins are off center. So what I'm thinking, you can tell me if it sounds crazy, is for these kind of stitches to kind of pre-make some that line up and then feed those as inputs into a tile generator and then just randomize it. So I do this, turn on tiling. And I could take this that's like a stitch, and then do another stitch, and then let's say we wanted to be able to stitch through a loop. My reference go? Yeah, it goes over. It doesn't go over the whole loop. something like that. And then maybe just over the middle of that one. And then probably one down here. Let's say that one. Oh, there we are. Okay, so then I basically have lined up stitches that I know are going to hit over these areas. So I can basically ditch all of this, dupe this tile generator, and then we're going to do image, and we have 4 of these. So then do 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I have stitches scattered all over the place that should line up with, shouldn't have thrown that levels away, should line up with this, wherever they land. So for whatever reason, it feels like this loop one is very common, which it's random, so I know that it's not, but just to help with that psychological fakery, now that feels really repeaty. I'm going to do that. I guess I don't need that. I can just do mask random. Random mask. We don't need that many stitches. Coverage seems pretty bad, so I'm going to try inverting it. Seems a little bit better. Okay. So then I need to do this same warp, same histogram. Those are the threads, and the threads are going to go on top of everything. And then here, we'll just take everything and push it back a little bit. Push it back a lot. In the ref, all of these are the color of like the thing that they're close to. Seems to be for the most part. So like these out by the border are stitched with a blue thread. I take that back. Here's one that's blue. So I think I'm just going to use the orange thread. So we'll do that again at the end over everything. I could try just using this gradient map to gradient map this, and then take this, rather. That's our opacity, and do lighten. Then if that thread goes over a hole, we'll cover it in. And then do the roughness part, which we just had a base color underneath. So just reuse that base color. And then finally, you need to subtract those threads out from the metalness. They are not metal. And then we get our threads. See if we're going to kind of tune the shape a little bit. It's not quite there. Oh, beautiful. The peak here is a little intense. We could kind of pre-tune that. Alright, now things are stitched down. And this trick worked a lot better than I thought it would. It's not recommended to use basically 3 interconnected tile nodes, because if I did want to change my scaling, then I have to change them all. So then I'd need to like expose parameters to put it at the root level so that I can control them together. In this case, because we're dealing with hexagon packing, we kind of have a set tiling that we know is going to work, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to go higher when we could do that in like a safe transform after the fact. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that this came out. First one in a long time. I think that I'm fairly pleased with. I think the drawing one was the last one that I felt pretty good about. So, yeah, there you go. Medieval, some Japanese, some samurai chainmail. This is probably from the 1500s. There's even a bunch of scratches that I didn't do. That would help a lot. So 1580 seemed okay and close to the Middle Ages in Europe, which is generally what the term medieval is applied to. In Japan, I think the term is feudal, but whatever. I didn't really get to do a lot of character stuff on Ghost, so it's kind of cool to make something that maybe the character team could use. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in, hanging out, keeping me going on this Nodevember challenge. Let's see, tomorrow is Art Deco. I vaguely remember Art Deco from art history. Um, so Art Deco and Cyberpunk will be fun because those are two things that I'm not really comfortable with. So hopefully I'll get to stream those and you can see me flounder around some more for 2.5 hours or so. But yeah, as always, thank you. Until next time.